All right, we're going to see whether this works. Hey, I'm good. See, we try to reward the people who are bold enough to sit up front with the nice cushy chairs. I don't know why you wouldn't want to sit there. Yeah, it's so funny because we've started live streaming some of these, and we're doing it on YouTube. We don't get as usually it's like 40 standing room only, and we're like, it's rainy, it's hot, it's off season, and we'll catch the video later, so we don't get as many people. Gotcha. It's way better to come in person.
Yeah, so this is going to be a replay video.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll have it on YouTube.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I realized, should I have brought a notebook or something?
Yeah, if you want, I don't care.
I didn't bring any, but.
That's all right.
No, I think I'll watch it again on YouTube.
I was going to say, there you go. Yeah, it'll be under Tradition School of Herbal Studies. Subscribe to it or whatever, yeah. We hope. We're trying to make it to that magic 1,000.
You're not at 1,000 yet?
No, not on YouTube.
Wow.
Facebook, we got a bazillion people, but that doesn't count for anything.
Well, yeah, you should tell them on Facebook to check out your YouTube
channel. We do that all the time.
Yeah.
Getting people to actually have action. Not always easy.
Yeah, that's true.
I think somehow when the word subscribe, I think creeps people out. Like they're somehow going to get charged.
Already subscribed. Oh, there we go. It's on live.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know what it looks like on that end. Oh, nice. And torrential downpours.
Oh, but that sky was threatening for the last half hour.
Oh, was it? I know. I saw the clouds getting black out there. I was like, ugh.
As soon as I walked in the door, I was like, oh, it's air conditioned. Went back in my car and got my sweater. I'm sensitive to the.
Yeah, sometimes it's really cold or really hot.
Yeah.
This place where I work, like one side is warm and the other side is like a refrigerator.
Figure out what the heck we're going to talk about. I don't know. We'll find out here shortly. It's one of those things that we talk about this so often, we're just kind of like, what shall we do? It doesn't exist in our society at all.
What doesn't exist?
Stress.
It has my day, I understand.
Looking at those books, you're gonna laugh. It reminds me of Harry Potter.
my day usually does look a lot like Harry Potter. I don't get yelled at by mugwort too often. Is it mugwort that they pulled out? No. No. What was the plant that screamed at them when they pulled it out of the ground? It wasn't mugwort. Actually mildly toxic herb. I used to have it. I don't have it anymore. I can't think what it is. It's a European herb. All right, top off my water. I got one of these cell phone. Little masses to arrive. People stalking outside with it.
But it smells like the herb shop in here.
Well, it kind of does. Can't imagine why.
What is soothing?
Look like they're coming in here. We'll see. It's funny. Unique thing about Floridians, they're never on time. So I appreciate you guys being here.
Well, I'm not a Floridian.
I'll see, that would explain it.
I mean, if you know my, I should be by now, like, I'm here.
I always learn 10 minutes early to everything, and everybody's 10 minutes late to everything. We're on Southern time here. So.
I could work a little bit longer, but no, I gotta get that.
See, and if you left early, that's getting rid of stress in your life. So you already learned the lesson.
What a stressful day today. My morning wasn't very nice. My brother's girlfriend lost her cookies.
Ooh,
So I had to go with my brother and my parents.
that's no fun. Do we have any? I don't
My
even.
day has been like,
One thing right after another.
What cool things have we got coming up? Oh, it's all backwards. That doesn't go good. How do all? I like it when I see new faces.
I love that you're back. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, you ready for a stupid pun I just saw today?
Oh Lord, go for it.
I swallowed a dictionary. It gave me the sorest throat I've ever had.
Oh, so bad. I love those stupid puns.
All right. Well,
Yo.
are you hustling everybody in?
Yeah.
We're live.
Yeah.
So, God received you.
Oh, we got more people. Yay. Yeah. I know. I had to make sure the thing's working. And believe it or not, I almost know how to edit this. We'll cut off the first 15 minutes and spare you. Those are the ones I'll forget. Pick a seat, any seat. Yeah? No, those are for the bold people who aren't afraid of sitting in the front row. You get the cushy chairs. We make the chairs more and more uncomfortable as we go back.
How you doing, Bob?
I'm good.
I've been hearing a lot of good things about you vicariously through other people I meet.
It's all lies. Lies.
I know this girl, Amanda Matthews, through
Yeah.
some like ceremony stuff we do,
Mhm.
and we were just talking about plants and stuff. And I was talking to you guys. She's like, "Oh yeah, I know. My dad is in the same world as them."
Nice.
That's so cool. That explains a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a beautiful human being.
Nice.
Probably would have come out. But it could be 1950.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The password
Yeah.
to the Wi-Fi. Yeah.
I was making you younger.
That's what I'm talking about. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Yeah, that's it. 77. Yeah. What up?
And some of the elders out there have things to help. But as far as like
What up?
the moon cycle and that ceremony,
Oh,
jeez.
Sweet.
Well, there's some people who have that fun yeah, they want to be able to at least spectate.
It's very, yeah, but it's for a reason, it's because they're too young.
We'll get started in just a minute.
I was told that because they're responsible for the earthquake. Yeah, by one of the Colombian families. And so it's like they get freaked out. Some of them don't care, but some of them get really out.
I don't want to be some of like herself on the planet communicating.
Yeah, we're taught to do that. We're taught to do that in the face paint, the whole nine yards. And the other thing is, it depends on who it is.
Yeah.
Because the Cherokee people are not figure out about that.
Yeah.
You have to visit the princess.
Well, this Sundance is it's really beautiful. I try to not talk about how to really I feel like, you know, it's the Lakota ceremony, but it's mixed with the Native people. The Native people have a really military, you can't be there if you're not. Oh, yeah. So
They're not gonna buy it.
it's such a beautiful thing. I mean, literally anyone can go there. Anyone can participate as long as you follow them.
I know, but there's reasons, so we can't, there are several different ways that's not just and coding works. And, you just have to, the second you don't do it, it goes. You have to be on it, you have to take it.
Oh, no, they're dedicated. At least someone who's been on their ED for over a year.
So I'll write down.
Yeah.
When are you going to do that?
I was one of the
So they're just playing around.
yeah, I mean, they're just going there to observe and stuff like
The other option is the dark. So they don't
yes,
stop.
yes, yeah. Yeah, I knew there was people that
We can do that. That's and it's so you know it's done for ceremony all the time. The reasons that, like in some cases, I'm a male that's supposed to be fire tender, and in some cases I'm the only fire tender that's there, and I'm allowed to. And so I'm not allowed to attend, and so I have to. They're afraid, and so we even have to stop it for that, no matter what, because I have to go fire tender.
I say we go ahead and get started, and the heck with all the people who are running late.
Yeah, we were just.
I don't want to punish the folks who are timely.
I saw that there was a huge storm, and so that there was like black coming across the bay. That usually
no
freaks
good here.
people out a little bit.
We got a couple people online. Hi, people online.
So it's 6:31, and on these nights, on Fridays, when we do this, we try to be very prompt.
Yeah.
And get started into. Do you want to do a hello, a goodbye? Do we want to talk about upcoming events at all?
Whatever.
Okay. Bob says whatever, which is hardly ever the case.
There's some new faces, so hey.
Yeah. So hey, I'm super happy to see several of you that I haven't seen in a while. And my name is Renee, and I'm a clinical practicing herbalist. And I can grab them if you want. I'm a clinical practicing herbalist, and what that means is I, in a clinical sense, give you herbs and plants or herbs and plant advice, hoping to restore your body to its balance so that it can naturally heal. And it should be the basis of all medicine should be that technically. And I do it in a clinical sense in that I try to repeat those things over and over and get the same outcome versus just trying this and seeing what happens. I'm also trained traditionally, and what that means is the first medicine was herbalism. It's still the primary medicine for 85% of the population, the world's population. And in every country except for America, it's combined with pharmaceuticals and essences and spiritual counseling and everything that would go with that, so that we're the only ones that separate those chunks out. So I'm a clinical practicing herbalist, blah, 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 blah. Specialty generally is cancer care. Would love for that not to be the case, but it's an epidemic. Hi, nice to see you. Bob Linde is the one that's in the back. He's also a clinical herbalist, but he's also a Chinese herbalist other than Western and an acupuncture physician or acupuncture doctor, however you want to put it. And this is our clinic and this is our school. And as a part of community outreach and a matter of everybody just being okay, we try to do these classes so that everybody can just have the knowledge that they're supposed to have that we feel would have been passed from generation to generation, but we don't live that way anymore. So we have to, as elders, whether we're older or not, pass any information that we have to help everybody know what's out there for them. So we try to do things, one, that will never harm anybody, and two, that's readily accessible, or something that's bioregionally accessible, so more than just readily accessible at a store, that you could just go reclaim that knowledge and that plant off the ground after speaking to it and making sure it's the one for you. But in that way, you have all the food knowledge and the medicine knowledge that you need, as if your elders would have been there passing it to you, like your grandparents and your great-grandparents, your aunties and uncles, because we would have been in the same area together. So we try our very best whenever we have an open Friday to do this for that reason, so that the community has their medicine and their food knowledge, anything that we know, we want you to know. I do know that Bob is pretty crazy about upcoming events, and they're usually on the board. He's like a carnival worker. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you guys about things that are coming up. This weekend, I think, is completely full with 101. Yeah. Okay. So 101 is a class, an herbal class that we want everybody to have. It kind of keeps you out of the wall. Anything else and just that, you'd be prepared for at least caring for yourself a little bit. That is full as of now. Next Friday-ish, is that 2 Fridays from now? I'm asking because I don't know. So 2 Fridays from now, we have a class that's about basic crystal healing. I used to teach physics, theoretical as well as mechanical, and a little bit of calculus. And the reason I'm telling you that is because I can definitely teach you the crystal from a molecule, negative, positive, neutral charge sense, so that you understand how it's helping to rebalance again, gain balance within your body, not to be ill. So something like a tumor would be out of balance because that would be a real stuck energy, and being able to soften that or move that out would be great. But just like I told you in the beginning, me being traditionally trained, I think it's important that you understand that there are elders, and they're literally the foundation that we stand on. And there's a lot of stuff that goes with that. So they're part of our medica. They're on the shelf that we would use those in and on you, in your body and on your body, as just like a plant, because they're just another, like we need minerals in our body. So we do a once every year or 6 months, we do a crystal healing class that's a basic. And then that usually leads to things like gridding and charges and other essences and that kind of thing. But we need to get the basics in for the people who haven't been here, because it's really foreign. Like, you think I'm saying crazy talk if you haven't gone through like the basics.
And that one we do limit it by, I think, about 15 people. So
because we do hands-on stuff. Yeah. We'll throw up tables if anybody's comfortable.
And that one's not free.
No, that one's definitely not free. But it is something that just with that you would have enough knowledge to kind of try to figure out the basis of not making yourself sick by putting too much iron in your elixir or something like that. So it's something that I try to give you the basics for. And then we'll have next Friday another free class that's kind of like summertime herbs. And it's things that you would think bumps, bites, abrasions, sunburns, things that would happen in the summertime more than not, to help you through it. We also have this weird cold thing that happens. There's summer colds, just like there's winter colds. And so that's a strange thing. In our area, like if you guys are local in Pinellas County, we have 2 algae bloom things that are an issue, and breathing is becoming an issue. And I'm seeing it all last week. I saw that, and I'm not even sick. I don't know why. So that was going on. And I swear it's the beginning of the red tide. And we have a little bunch of pink spots, but it's more the blue-green algae for sure that's showing up like in the Gulfport area, that it is present, and people are starting to get upper respiratory because of it. Issues. And so that's something that we'll probably address on that night as well, just because it's out there and there's things that are out and about that you guys can just have for free that would totally go a long ways to nourishing that in their food. So it's a good thing. Other than that, the Chinese herbal program starts in November, and we have to be very careful to say that many moons ahead of time, because it only starts once a year and it's a 2-year program. And so everybody has to know ahead of time for the Chinese program you have to attend the first 3. You can't miss them. You can miss the other ones and come in and out of the program, but the first 3 have to be attended. So once it's done, it's done. You don't get another chance till next November. So I mean, many times, many moves ahead of time will tell you that. And for anybody who's already taken 101 and wants to continue on to foundations for the Western program, that starts in 2 weeks to get you done in time to get in for advanced in January, which would be here in the clinic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. If you didn't know, we were going to talk about herbs for stress tonight. I might, as soon as this one starts talking, which is nonstop, I might get up and go get one of the stress herbs because clearly I'm wound up a little bit. And so we might work on it that way. Feel free to unitalk through all of it because we are, oh, he's handing me these sheets, how funny. We are used to unitalking and I don't need any more. Yeah, I'll put that one to the side. We're used to unitalking. We want you to fully have the advantage of us being present in front of you. And the other thing is, when the class isn't crazy 50 full, we have more of an opportunity to have a discussion. And so please feel like you can stop us and say, and we'll totally cut you off and be like, gotta go on. And so it's not rude. Don't let us say something, especially since several of you aren't herbalists, but you're enthusiasts. So you might not know a term we're using or how to use something. Please, please, please say. And I'll happy to step in and tell you anything I know until he tells us not to talk anymore and that we're done. Okay. Any questions? All right. You want to go?
Sure.
Do you know what you're talking about?
No.
Okay. So I'm not lying. I am going to try to find it. I was going to tell you to simmer it down.
Yeah.
Do you want me to write on the board?
I'm sure we'll get to that.
And you guys have to know it too, because you can see the board. Bob has doctor writing. That's why he got to be a doctor. He had the writing first. And so please say if you don't understand what he's writing.
What was that? I was accused of having a zombie Stewie on the board the other day. I'm not quite sure. I think it was some part of the digestive system. So probably one of my favorite subjects to talk about is stress, depression, anxiety. We kind of lump it all in together, even though they're very different animals. And it's to some level, and we're told on TV, on the radio, and everything else that that's an illness, that there's something wrong with you if you have depression, anxiety, if you have too much stress in your life. And I'm here to tell you, it's like, no, it's what makes you get out of bed in the morning and go to work, is stress. And it's a question of degree and how long you've had it. Unfortunately, if we were to look at the top 20 prescription medications that, everybody is on at this point, the amount of depression and anxiety medications is far and above the greatest bulk of those medications. And the downside of it is there's nothing wrong with taking some of those meds, except that you don't stop. They're not fixing anything. And what they find is after 3 or 4 years, most people actually stop on their own because they don't like the way they make them feel. So you didn't like the way you felt, so you take a medication that for a little while maybe makes you feel better. Then you go, no, I don't like the way that feels either. And so there are times and places where we need those things, when we're no longer able to function, when it goes on for too long. And I'll give you the wrong reason to do some of those prescription medications. When a couple of years ago, my mom passed away, and my brother, who deals with addiction, the first thing the doctor did was, can I write you a script? And so, no, we're supposed to grieve. We're supposed to go through this process. And so he wasn't even given the opportunity to process those emotions. It was immediate medication. And I didn't take them. He did. And because he'll take anything anybody gets. No, sorry, Scott. I mean that way. So the reality is it's not even appropriate because most of those medications take 4 to 6 weeks to even start to act on the body, which is about how long it takes you to process through most acute situations. And so, yeah, I feel better. It's because you just got better. There is, when we look at the process of that, and we'll start maybe a little medically and then go a little bit energetic-y. as we go through it, and we'll look at some herbs and supplements and actually just techniques that you can do that don't cost anything. My personal favorite, because I'm a cheapskate. When we look at depression, and I'll put that in kind of, I'm going to come back to stress and anxiety because those are closer together. There's a number of different reasons why our emotions can be affected. Sometimes, well, I'm going to say oftentimes it's a chemical imbalance. And we talk about a few different things and a few things that we should be talking more about that we don't. Serotonin is usually the biggest driver that we talk about with depression, and anxiety can be a piece of that. And the way it's processed through the body. Most of us think of serotonin and its relationship to that is affecting the brain, and it has a role with that. The reality is over 80% of it's produced in the gut. And if you've ever been diagnosed with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, or something like that, and you wonder why your doctor put you on an antidepressant, it's not because they thought it was all in your head. It's literally the gut the serotonin is responsible for the contractions in our gut to move the poop along, to move digestion along. So there is a relationship between our digestion and serotonin and emotions. And nobody in here's ever stress ate or pulled out the Haagen-Dazs when they were depressed because of that. And that's we always talk about things like the actors and actresses who puke literally right before they go on stage, or they get nervous diarrhea. These are things that are directly, this is a physical response to a chemical change, but we see its direct relation back to the emotional manifestation of that, of depression and anxiety. And so too often we put physical symptoms over here in this group, we put emotional symptoms over here in this group. So it's all in your head and you just have an emotional issue. You have depression and anxiety, but your IBS, your vomiting, your all of that, your insomnia, that's a physical thing.
Introductions and what I'm saying about the traditional healing, that we're the only country in the world that separates the emotional, the spiritual. It's so funny, and it's not because we're doing anything wrong. The doctors are definitely being doctors because they want to help people. It's just that's the way they've been taught. That's the knowledge base they have right now. Again, that lost connection with self. The other thing I want to say specifically about what Bob was saying was, we have people who come in and we tell them to eat better food, drink water, and here's a probiotic, and they think we're crazy because we didn't give them something. And we're like, no, that is your medicine, we promise. And it kind of goes on what Bob was saying. The second thing is always be careful if, in fact, you are going in for any kind of gut health, because sometimes, because he said this just as if everybody knows, sometimes you get those antidepressant medicine as your gut medicine, and you don't realize that's what they're giving you. It causes all kinds of other issues that are very difficult to reconcile if you don't realize you're on these meds. It swings you one way or the other. It's very serious to just cut them cold turkey, and it can inflame the gut problem and make it way, way worse before it makes it better as a rebound effect. So just be very, very knowledgeable about the medicines you are getting. That's one of the first things we ask people. Why are you taking this? It's not because we don't know. It's because we want to know what they've been told. It also messes with your hormones. It also messes with all kinds of nervous system reactions and endocrine system reactions.
And I have to be stopped from going too far down the rabbit hole, but I'm going to try to keep it as sane as I can. And when we talk about serotonin, we kind of put that in a subset. One of the things you'll hear from a lot of alternative health practitioners, and we're starting to hear it more from mainstream Western medicine as well, is what's called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal complex. HPA is way easier to say. And these are different glands in your body, and they secrete hormones that basically regulate our body. The goal of those things is to create homeostasis, balance. It's just they say it cooler when they say homeostasis. The short answer, this is stress. And so the little bit of stress that makes us get out of bed is great. The adrenal glands, little walnut-sized glands that sit on top of the kidneys, that also help us, when the saber-toothed tiger comes after us, it helps us fight off the saber-toothed tiger or run away. If you ever hear about the woman who pulled the car off the train tracks and things like that, that's all from this and the chemical that it puts out, adrenaline. The problem is we're fresh out of saber-toothed tigers, and most of us haven't had to pull a car off the train tracks lately. And yet we have this long-term, never-ending stress, where whether we're being assaulted by the internet, whether it's job stress, relationship stress, it's all of these baby saber-toothed tigers beating up on us all day long. And so our adrenal glands never stop working, and it throws our hormones out of whack. It's now become pretty much this idea of HPA has become pretty mainstream to the point where, I hate to say this, if you go to Wikipedia, never a great source, but nonetheless, in this case, they're very correct. They now find that not only does this something that affects us as adults in humans, but this is happening to us in utero. So when you're in the womb, if mom was under stress, you're sharing her hormones. If she's under stress, going through difficult times, then you're actually already in this fight or flight kind of mode. And I had a new way that I used to talk about when we're talking about the adrenal glands. It's fight, flight, and recently people have started to talk about freeze. And I liked it. Actually, it was Quentin added a new one he had learned, and I liked it. Fornicate. It's the 4 Fs. Not that that's stressful, but we need a little burst of energy and strength for that. So, I know the 4 Fs. Come on. I was just like, I like it. That works for me. So that's right. It's funny. There's certain things that don't work when we're in a state of stress. Our digestion shuts down because when we're fighting the saber-toothed tiger, ultimately we're only doing those things that are important. It's either how fast can we run, how strong can we be to fight that thing. So digestion isn't important. Urination, defecation.
So when you freeze or collapse,
but sex isn't important then either. So those mechanisms kind of shut down. So it's interesting. I'm seeing more and more men and women both coming in with impotence. For men that are unable to get erections, it's because they're under high stress. And for women, the failure to achieve orgasm and things like that, it goes back to that stress. And so the body's taking care of the vital things, working on keeping your organs and your muscles strong enough to fight off the saber-toothed tiger. So needless to say, we don't want to be under high stress for long periods of time. All of this is a part of, I'm just going to put this, as part of your sympathetic nervous system. So, don't be stressed. Isn't that easy to say, right? So the opposite of all of this is the parasympathetic nervous system. And I'm going to take this guy off of here. The parasympathetic nervous system, we're just going to mostly talk about the adrenal glands, is control, or it's not controlled by, it is communicates through the body through the vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in the body. It goes and does all kinds of cool stuff. And it's funny, it's not a new word, but there's a word we're starting to hear more and more, vagal tone. And it's what is the strength of your vagus nerve? How is it doing in its job of regulating some of these things like digestion, breathing, heart rate, really kind of important stuff. And it's funny, there's, I think I was in high school, one of my undermaster, I went to a military school, it doesn't matter. He was a science teacher who was forced to teach English. He didn't enjoy teaching English. But what he would do is every time somebody came up with a complaint, like somebody came in hiccuping, he sat there and talked about the entire mechanism of how a hiccup happens. It's an action of the vagus nerve. What do we do to people to stop them from hiccuping? Boo, right? We scare them. And so when this is dysfunctional, we engage this to create balance, homeostasis. The opposite is true. We can stimulate the vagus nerve when this is in a state of disrepair or dysfunction. So when we talk about the vagus nerve and the tonality of it, there's a couple of things that these are not herbal. We'll get to the herby stuff here in a minute. A couple of things that we like to talk about with that. One is belly breathing. And I'm going to come back and we're going to spend more time about belly breathing here in a little bit. And so when we start going to meditation classes, doing breath work, things like that, the reality is we're exercising our vagus nerve because it controls our ability to breathe. Singing and humming seem to stimulate the vagus nerve and help again to reset it. I have the vagal tone. One of the things that I believe to be true, I haven't found the research to back it up, but I'm sure it's out there, I just haven't found it, is things like, and I'm going to say anything that's vibrational, music, singing bowls, drum circles, anything that's percussion that's affecting us is going to work on that vagal tone. The other, I feel like I'm forgetting one. Now, there's one other one that's kind of creepy, that cold water seems to have an effect on it. And if you've ever watched, usually it's a little kid that's just like, screaming, just losing their crap and like completely irrational. It's because the TV turned off. They're not in trauma. And yet for a little 3 or 4 year old, that's trauma. You know, like, oh my God, I can't watch TV anymore. And they're no longer responding to reason, right? Like, chill out, whatever, go to your room, nothing's happening. Throwing cold water on them will immediately stop it. I know that sounds crazy. Yeah. And so it's smack on the side of the TV. Well, okay, most of y'all have cable, but back when we had rabbit ears and really bad reception, you smack the side of the TV because the lines are going all crazy, it immediately sets it. By shocking somebody, boo, cold water. It's specifically cold water. And so when we look at that long-term adrenal stress, just a few seconds of cold water in the shower is the equivalent. You can go back to warm water, because personally I hate cold water, but it brings us back into focus. Part of it is when we get into an irrational anxiety state, the chatter starts to go and we create some of that anxiety. That, you know, that anxiety is when we're making decisions or having fear over something that hasn't happened and we don't know that it's going to happen. It's that anticipation of something yucky. And that can lead to very long-term high stress issues. And one of the ways to bring us out of that bad thought process loop is literally to cause a little shock, a little cold water in the morning as you're taking your shower. And so it doesn't sound very pleasant. I remember back in the 70s, that was quite the rage actually, was the alternating hot and cold showers. It does other interesting things too. There was a whole system around that. All right, that's enough science.
Okay, real quick before Bob goes on with that, it's important as we go through the plant and we go through these systems of changing our stress patterns to think about like why he just went through that particular way of explanation. Because in doing that, he talked about the nervous system, he talked about the endocrine system, and he talked about the digestive system. So at some point when we're saying because of energetics, which we'll touch on when we're speaking out the rest of the class, why some of us are sitting here and our temperature is hot, and why we're sitting here with the same temperature and temperature is cold, energetics. When we start to say things like, we know from this kind of stress response that you need to eat more of this and drink more of that, and this one is more proper for you, just based on looking at you, Now you know what we're thinking, because we're thinking that your inability for your body to regulate back to that homeostasis thought process is because you need more of this, because that process is being acted upon. So that's really what we're thinking about, and it's why one medicine doesn't work for all people, especially if your digestion was off and not digesting the medicine that was being given to you. So it's just something to keep in your brain as we go forward thinking about.
I promise this is the last sciencey thing. So we talk about stress, the adrenaline. Our adrenaline, as it's processed through the body, becomes cortisol, and cortisol should spike a little bit in the morning. It makes us get out of bed, and so our cortisol levels naturally change throughout the body. At night, when we're in a deep sleep, is when our body processes out the cortisol. If we're not getting a good night's sleep, we end up with, I would call it a Buddha belly, but that would be a good thing. We end up with all of our weight right here, that we have an abnormal amount of abdominal fat, and legs, everything else is thin. It's just right here. And that's a stress belly, for lack of a better name. It's because we're under stress long term and we're not sleeping well, that cortisol will accumulate the fat here in our abdomen. And so sometimes it's like, I got stress and anxiety. I just need you to sleep and poop. There's a reason for it. And it doesn't always make sense because it's way too long to explain all this crap. It's one of the reasons there's a device that a lot of people, as they start to put on weight, as they get older, get under stress that's not treated properly, blood pressure starts to go up and they end up with sleep apnea. So they put on a CPAP, or now there's a BiPAP, there's all kinds of other. And it allows them to get a deeper sleep, and ultimately, oxygen, I hear, is important for us to do stuff. But the reality is they'll lose weight because of it oftentimes, because now their body's able to get rid of the cortisol. And cortisol, when it stays in the body inappropriately, causes inflammation. So we see inflammation, it's heart disease, it's organ failure, it's the blood not flowing through the body. Pretty much all chronic diseases, inflammation. So the more we can do to reduce that, the better our body is.
Doing what? Okay, so, and then we'll forget your
And say the question for the camera.
So the question was, what about oversleeping? So the key is when we're not rested. So we can sleep and sleep and sleep. If you don't wake up rejuvenated, if you're not systematic. I know it's important in your endocrine system to realize that we're on the clock, the circadian rhythm clock, and it has to do with the rise and the rise and the fall of the sun, period. But that's it. We're supposed to be up with the sun and sleep with the sun, the moon, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. And so if we're sleeping past that point, if we're staying up past the moon going down and sleeping past, we start to move our clock like this. And all these other things happen during that time that make it so that our whole entire body gets inflamed and doesn't react properly. So one of the things is we are supposed to fornicate. How funny. We're supposed to have sex, and we're supposed to pee, and we're supposed to poo on this exact schedule. The reason we would have been doing that was safety. But you're never going to, in the middle of the day, when everything's up and alive and walking around, be pooping. You're going to get up in the morning, your blood pressure and your temperature falls and drops in certain ways at certain times, and all of that is going to happen in this perfect rhythm to keep us alive, to make us have the healthiest babies, to make our food digested properly in the most efficient way. And the second it starts to notch at all the wrong way, that those times that we are waking up incorrectly are going to directly affect that organ set. So it's very important that regardless of what's going on, you're going to bed in the dark, getting up in the light, and that's going to dictate sleeping too much. Because if you were sleeping too much, you would be asleep while the sun was up and rising, or you'd be going to bed when the sun was up, and it would cause a distortion of what was going on in the chemicals in your brain. So one of the very best things I've ever been told to do as far as that goes, because I do not have restless sleep at all. I have adrenal fatigue and have all kinds of HPA axis issues, as well as digestive issues and neurological issues. So I've been told that no matter what, if I wake up the same time every single day, and it's at a proper time for the sun to be rising. So if I set my clock for 7 o'clock, so it wasn't as early as 6 where people were like, oh, it's too early. But if I got up at 7 o'clock every single day, even if I had gone to sleep at 5, like just 2 hours previously, that would do more for my body to reset and put everything back than just resting throughout the day. Having a little bit of cat nap here and there would be something. Yeah, I know. And I know, but you do understand. Do you understand? You're under an so what she said is I get up with the sun every single day and I'm still very, very tired. What you don't know is the person you're talking to has an infant child who she's still completely feeding and keeping a human alive and is working and is under an immense amount of stress. And what we're taught but never allowed to do is that when we have babies who are sucking the life out of us literally, and she's getting ready to get up and run away. So like you are a moving human, you are keeping alive, that you are supposed to eat, pee, poo, and sleep at the same time that she does. So do you go to sleep every time she goes to sleep? Do you get someone to change your diapers anytime that you want? Do you get to eat good, nourishing food every time that she eats good, nourishing food? So if you did those things, then you might feel a tad bit more rested. But that's an impossibility. And so that's the deal.
And think about the saber-toothed tiger bit again. So we've all been there, right? Where you almost got in a car accident and somebody almost hit you on a bike or whatever. And literally for that millisecond that you avoided it, hopefully, where everything slowed down, you got hyper-focused. Ideally, you turned the car, you did whatever you needed to do to avoid it. And it was literally like, that was a miracle. How did that happen? And then the second it's done, you might be crying, you start sweating, your hands are shaking, you're gasping for breath. That's because your body got this huge rush of adrenaline. Now do that 24 hours a day.
That's what
of course you're exhausted, because as soon as that bike almost got hit, you're shaking, you're exhausted, you collapse, people fall down. That's what adrenaline does. And so when we're playing with that HPA, it's not a single moment in time, it's all day long. And so you're hyper exhausted.
So if you were a hunter-gatherer and you had her as an infant, you had her strapped to your back, and you were hunting and you were gathering, you would be in hyper mode all of the time. So when the sun was the greatest and you needed to siesta, like you needed to take a nap, you guys would go to a space that wasn't in the middle of hunting and gathering, like a cave, and you would lay down with her and take a nap, and then you'd get back up as the sun was starting to go. And so you're not getting to do that. You're being chased all day. And so there's no point that you're not running with a baby on your back. And so that's the thought process with that. That's really a huge issue with moms in America, especially because you see it in field workers that strap the baby on and continue to plant the rice. Like you think about an Asian culture, that is just inefficient. We learn this from like Haiti and Peru and permaculture and biodynamics. We learn it from any of our sustained cultures that still hunt and gather. It's just inefficient to be outside when it's that hot or to gather all day long. You do it right here, you do it right here, and then here you're all together and you're safe and you're relaxing and you can either rest and someone can watch the baby, or you do something that's calm and sweet and quiet. And it's just not something that we allow as Americans us to do. Dad or mom. Like if dad was the one watching it, he'd be in the same circumstance with the exception of you're literally growing a human with your body. So you have a little bit added a thing. So it's something that is an issue for mamas.
So there's a couple things to think about when we start to move into the realm of herby stuff. In general, we should think about our herbs. We kind of need to put them in categories of hot and cold, wet and dry, nourishing, or reducing. And nobody ever talks about that. It's like, what herb do I take for is kind of the way we think about things. So that idea of something that's a hot herb, think ginger, right? And so it's going to warm your digestion. It's not spicy, but it feels warm in your belly. And in the same sense, in summertime, nothing tastes better or feels better than eating watermelon in the summertime. It's not that it's physically cold. It's not, well, you might be in the refrigerator, but you could pull it right out of the field, break it open, start eating it. Your body feels cool, nourished, and refreshed. So we say that's a cooling herb or food. And so all foods, all supplements, all herbs fall into these categories of hot and cold, wet and dry. Think okra for moistening.
Choosing something or recommending something for all of you, just from the act of looking into, we're thinking to ourselves, oh, we need to do this because it's more moisturizing, or we need to do that because it's going to pull away, based on what we're seeing. Like somebody who's heat-cheeked all the time means their heat is rising like a volcano. Mm-hmm. So we'll need to choose one of the ones that's going to help that coolness move away. And
And ultimately, when we look at traditional cultures, what did we do before Western medicine, before we did blood work, before we had MRIs and all that? So there was a system outside of the Western medical construct that was in Chinese, Ayurvedic, all the native cultures, it didn't matter, Celtic, you name it. All of them had a diagnostic system that had this similarity of hot, cold, wet, dry, deficient, excess, and tense and lax ultimately. But they all had different funny words for it. Yin and yang and qi was for Chinese medicine, and so forth. So as we talk about the herbs, we're going to try to use that language so you know what the heck we're talking about. But in particular, when we're starting to look at stress, adrenal, the HPA kind of ideas, things that help us adapt to stress, adaptogens. And there's a variety of different definitions of that. Everything has a potential side effect. So some people say it's safe for anybody to take under any reasons at any dosage. Oh, horse puppy, you could die from water, So adaptogens are things that help you adapt to stress. And that's really the long and the short of it. Because I hate to say it, you can't always change your situation. You got to go to work, you got to do this, you got to take care of your kid. And so those are things that are stressors that you've got to deal with. So how do we make it so our body doesn't hyper respond to the stimulus that we're getting? When we start to talk about anxiety, and in some cases, where does anxiety fall in the realm of depression? It's like an offshoot, but it's its own separate thing. We can look at nervines, things that help the nerves. And so sometimes you'll see these very thin, wiry people, so we need things that nourish them. And we talk about frazzled nerves. Literally, it feels like their nerve endings are just frayed and irritated.
Misfiring.
And so moistening, calming, cooling those things off oftentimes will help. And so when we look at prescription drugs, there are things that sedate people. And sedating people is just making them lose their zest for life. And that's not always what we want to do. There's times when that's appropriate. But mostly we look to nourish. Sedating is when somebody's hyper robust, for lack of a better name for it, that their pulse is pounding and forceful, they're loud, and their movements are wild. They likely have high blood pressure and acid reflux, and they're anxious. Yeah, and literally that's what it is. So those people, we need to chill that. We need to chill them out a little bit. We need to have them hold on to a rock for it. So we're gonna do our best to cover some of these. But wait, I gotta throw one more idea in because I haven't baffled you enough. Yeah, let's go that way. I gotta get my Chinese stuff.
While he's doing that, is there any questions about anything that we said? Yeah.
I have another question about.
Hold on a minute, because he held on from the last time.
Sorry.
So when we're talking cold water, are we getting into hydrotherapy?
Yeah, in some cases you can. Yeah, absolutely. And there's way more strict protocols. And if you come as a client, or if you're in class, we talk more about like a protocol for that, because there's some that we disagree with that used to be old-timey ways.
I'm not a fan of putting people in buckets of ice.
Yeah.
And that is a thing.
I mean,
The
I was a professional
cryotherapy, whatever.
Sure we have horrifying. It is proven to not really do. It just kind of numbs you from feeling the pain that you like normally get. So yeah, hydrotherapy is amazing, and I've seen great effects of my own body doing it. Not having a practitioner to like force you to do it, like I almost never will. Like I really need somebody to whack their finger at me because it's frightening. But just the same concept as like the polar bear club and plunging and coming out and making it feel so great. Just that reset of nervous system to get like a zero line again is very, very helpful. And so yeah, hydrotherapy for sure. What were you going to say?
On the subject of sleep, is it true or false that you can make up your sleep on the weekends?
Nah.
It's false. So you.
I wish.
I understand the concept of a sleep thing, and we've all done the like bachelor party or whatever where you stay up one night or you make it through a shift without sleeping, and especially when we were young. But really, it's about consistency. Our bodies, our minds, our spirits crave lack of chaos and consistency. And from a physics standpoint of just energetic molecule charges, that we are going to run into chaos. We're going to exist, and we're going to burn out our battery life And if we have less chaos and more structure, we actually gain battery life. That's like a very normal thing. Hence us sending electric currents through things like copper versus chalk. That's the reasoning. It's going to gain more, store more, and conduct in an easier way. So the more structured we are, the more our system runs in an efficient and then battery life type style. Eventually, your battery has to be replaced. There is no more of that gaining that extra. And so, in concept and theory, for a short amount of time, you can regain some sleep lost within a 5-day period.
And there's, you know, if we're not getting good sleep and our cortisol is not being processed, other hormones aren't being processed, we create inflammation, and that creates damage. And so that doesn't mean you can't repair damage, but it's going to take you longer to repair it. So if you're like, oh, I had a lousy night's sleep for the last 3 nights or the last 3 months even, can you catch it up in 1 month? No. You did some oxidative stress damage, inflammation.
Yeah.
And so now if for the next 6 months you generally sleep well, you wake up feeling rested, now the body's going to start to repair those tissues. So yes, you can fix what you broke.
But not in the way that we've been taught with the sleep.
But not like, I'm going to just sleep all day Saturday.
If you have a job that you have 2-day weekend and you think you're what you like at a horrible 5-day weekend on,
It doesn't work.
it don't work. You're gonna hit a wall.
Quit your job, get a new job.
You're
Yeah.
doing internal damage that is not repairable unless you just stop. You have to be in moderation and all. Oh, you're funny. Coming from this one. I know. That was funny.
Make your money first.
So the best thing you can think of is consistency, a little bit each day to reel back what you perceive to be an unbeneficial lifestyle. Like, don't even say bad or good. It served you for the time it did. Now we need to go to something else.
It's funny.
hard on
A
yourself.
lot of the adaptogens we'll talk about are also antioxidant. And so depending on who you read, what research, you'll find that it's not just helping you handle stress, it's also helping handle inflammation, oxygenation, and other things in your body.
Real quick, Bob's I'm gonna say something because you can keep some things that we assume people know what they are. So antioxidation, it's important because we have cells that are slightly oxidized or deformed, and almost all things that attack us. Remember uniformity and lack of chaos, structure for battery. Almost all things that attack us attach to the damaged cell if it doesn't get killed off or repaired, and it will cloak on that cell. And so all the times that we have little notches in our cell, something else can overtake. And this is a very simplistic way of looking at it. And so we have either an imperfect cell floating around, which is chaos and not fluid, so you're not getting energy, you're wasting energy, or you have something, a tensor, because it didn't die off in time, and now our body thinks it's the whole cell, and it's not anymore. It's the cancer cell feeding off of that and then expanding. And so it's very, very important when you hear the term antioxidant, it's just like some kind of buzzword that's in the news all of the time. It's very important for people to understand that oxidation means damage to the cell and lack of apoptosis, so that we're not dying off properly without like regenerating cells properly. And it also means we're more susceptible to something attacking. And it also means that we're working in chaos instead of in structure, so that we're wasting energy, so we feel exhausted. So it's very, very important that we deal with oxidation.
It's funny. I think I've said way too many times the root of all diseases is stress, to include getting hit by a truck. So you're like, oh, I was really stressed out, and so I didn't sleep well, and so I was a little loopy. I wasn't paying attention when I walked across the street. You got hit by a truck. Like literally, that resulted from your bad night's sleep. That resulted from the stressor. Admittedly, there's things that happen. We get hit by meteorites, but that's not very common.
Very much.
So
much. I know, but listen, no, but you have listened to us. This poor woman here.
We don't usually have time to do this on a client intake, so like you guys are
done
getting.
this. I've tried to explain, like I've done this.
So,
but you do great. You're doing your best.
So this is more Chinese herbal medicine and Chinese diagnostics, and we talk about the 5-element system. And so when we talk about these organs, we're really talking about this energetic idea of an organ. So we put different actions and thoughts into the organ. You know, the heart is just this muscle that pumps your blood. And the reality is we're finding out the heart does more than that. That when people have heart attacks, when people get heart transplants, we see there's behavior changes. that people who are really nice become assholes, or vice versa. They found out that there's taste receptors in the heart muscle for bitter taste. Yeah, and there's also, we're finding out hormones that are secreted by the heart. And so we in Western thought, we're still starting to understand what this unique muscle is that pumps all the blood through in this perfect rhythm. In Chinese medicine and other alternative thoughts, we start to put other aspects. We put mental health into it. We look at anxiety, we look at sleep. And with each one of these, we have relationships that are different from just the physical organ. So don't overthink these. If I said them in Chinese, I'd probably say it wrong. So there's a few things that, and I wrote these in a very particular way. With each one of these organs, we make these associations, like we see heart associated with anxiety and sleep. When I say spleen, it's actually digestion. And so even though the spleen doesn't have a whole lot of role in digestion, we think pancreas, spleen, stomach, intestines. Yeah. So overthinking or worry. With the lung, we associate grief, kidney, fear. The liver, we see depression, irritability, and anger. It's interesting. We say the liver controls the menses in Chinese medicine. So what do we see with PMS? That we'll oftentimes see depression, irritability. I had one client who said, irritable? No, murderous. My coworkers live in fear. I was like, I'm afraid of you. So when we have somebody exhibiting one of these emotions, we may think about this particular idea, but we also see an interrelationship between each of these. So the idea that stress, and I'm going to say stress primarily affects the liver, stress causing digestive issues. And I'll make you really crazy. We also associate a flavor with each one of these.
We learned that from our friends.
So when you're stressed out, you get weird cravings. In particular, for some people, they want yummy sweet stuff. And of course, we overdo it. We damage our digestion. With the sour, salty, just because, bland, and bitter. One of the things we like to think about is stress can affect our digestion. We also see this cycle where stress causes anxiety, heart palpitations. So, and here's where it gets confusing. Heart palpitations, always think nobody knows Sanford and Son, but it's like, oh, it's the big one. You feel your heart pounding in your chest. It's an awareness of your heartbeat. Like right now, I assume my heart's beating. I'm not going to swear to it. I think I'm conscious. I think my heart's beating, but I actually have no awareness. Unless I took my pulse, I wouldn't know that I have that.
If you're laying in bed and you can hear your heartbeat in your ear, even if it's a nice slow one, you're in trouble. Like
I'm not in trouble. It's just,
no,
but that's a heart
you
palpitation.
are. Like if you're laying in bed and you can hear your heart, you're stressed to freak out. That's something that's an issue. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and yet you might not identify as having heart palpitations, but that's what that is.
What happens when
That's anxiety. That's from yeah. Like it feels like a heart tightening. It can be sharp electric pain.
And chances are really good it's not a heart attack.
Yeah.
Although it will feel like one, or it can feel like one.
It'll be like you'll go to the hospital. Yeah, that's anxiety.
Not to no, make sure it's not. But the reality is anxiety can manifest as that pounding heart in the chest. It can even have electrical sensations, pain going down the arm, heaviness on the chest. Those are all heart attack signs, but they're also signs of anxiety. And so how do you differentiate those? If you're 22 years old, it's probably not a heart attack. But if you're 65, you've never had anxiety in your life, and you have lots of other risk factors of a heart attack, you might be having a heart attack. And with women, it doesn't show up as clearly as men. For women, it's a silent killer if it's a heart attack. So important to get that checked to make sure that there isn't an underlying heart issue or anything like that. But most of the time when you're not walking around with, if you've had anxiety, if you're under high stress, it's very likely it's anxiety.
In particular, I've been diagnosed with things in the heart. So like just say a murmur or a mitral valve prolapse. It's like a genetic, like not genetic, but it's an injury. Like you can see it. It's like a picture you can take. It's only present some of the time. Like I'll get the fluttering, I'll get the pounding, I'll get the anxiety, I'll get the I'm having a heart attack, and my mitral valve prolapse shows, the murmurs present, yada yada. 2 months earlier, Mayo Clinic doctors are like, no, it's not there. All of a sudden, Mayo Clinic doctors are like, oh, it's here. So which one is it? Because that's not supposed to be something that comes and goes. So that if you already have risk factors or you have something going on, like a murmur or a mitral valve that never really messes with you, it very much is exacerbated by stress, by lack of fluid, by other things tightening up, by signaling of the endocrine system to do anything to stop you and to slow you down.
Over 50% of the people with mitral valve prolapse or similar heart valve issues have diagnosable mental or emotional disorders, emotional like depression, anxiety, and they don't know why.
That's why.
Chinese have known that for
And it boils down, and like Bob can testify to this, it boils down to like nourishment and how long you're taking care of yourself. Because for me in particular, when I have any other respiratory issues and I have to take the special medicine or the herbs that will bronchial dilate, i.e. then cause the over palpitation, but I have a predominant side that will go to that immediately. Like within the next couple days, I'll have the flutters all through the night and not be able to sleep and wake up like on this gasping. Well, it's generally because I'm sick and I'm not getting enough fluids and I'm not getting enough food. And that's making then the complication of the bronchial dilating medicines worse. And so if we were actually cared for properly, so it really is an issue that all of a sudden I get crazy and I'm not. Like I need to eat some food and drink some water and have somebody take my pulse and like you're fine. So it's an interesting way to see it happen.
So I'll throw in kind of to the extreme PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. We usually associate that with soldiers, but anybody can have PTSD. And so it can be from a car accident, an abusive relationship, and all kinds of other crazy stuff. The reality is there's usually something that scares you severely, like you are in fear for your life for whatever reason. And we see a relationship between the kidney and heart. We see that in both Western medicine as well as alternative medicine. So what we say is that fear, that fright that you get, stops the communication between these two energetic organs, referred to as fire and water. It's not easy to correct those, but that's oftentimes when we think about what does this look like? How is this manifesting? It's these two not in balance and aggravated by stress.
So it looks like this, and we're going to give you buzzwords, which people come in and say, I feel like nerves are misfiring. I feel like I'm on fire. I feel like an electric wire that's thing. It's throbbing. It's dull. I just want the lights to go off and go into a corner, and it matches perfectly the energetics of that. So it's okay, honey.
So you're like, this is fire and water. Are we like really?
Yes. Yes, like the Bugs Bunny commercial out the ears. Yes. So the conversation that we have with you guys in class about the pot that boils and boils and boils. So first it starts to simmer, then it starts to roll, then it starts to spill over, then the steam takes all of it out, and it's just white hot, and it cracks and falls apart, and it's freezing cold because it's off the burner. That's the description of somebody crashing and burning. That's what happens inside of our body, and we see it completely and totally. We can watch it happen in steps of the body and evacuation of bowels. It's the same concept. So once a volcano overspills and blows the top, it gets that pressure release. What happens? It gets hard and cold and settled, and then it's rigid. Yeah, you can have excessive deficiency. You can have both. You can have deficiency and excess. So definitely it will burn off eventually because you can have phlegm and it will turn into things like stones instead, like kidney stones, instead of globule phlegm moving around, or clogged arteries, or plaque in the brain, Alzheimer's. Like it'll turn into plaque hardness eventually. The moisture will burn out eventually. But yeah, that is advanced.
It's
okay. It's okay.
Oats.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about the first plant we're gonna talk about is what is going on over here with your little.
Oatmeal is not amazing. Milky Oats rocks.
Okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is oats, which is a Venus sativa, is what we're talking about, which is just a basic oat spot with multiple species of oats. And oats and oat tops, in particular, at the top of the hierarchy of when we say you need oats, is something called milky oat tops. And milky oat tops is this really magical thing. As oats are growing, as they come up onto the world, and I'm gonna say hey to Zach Woods and Melanie Carpenter because I know this is exactly what you guys do in your spare time. That looks like this gelatinous, milky mess, and it's just manna from heaven. It's gold. That it is. That exactly is what you need to help with that reparative, restorative thought process. So I'm going to draw you basically what would be an axion, like a synapse and an axion. I'm going to do it like this. Okay, so we're going to do that there. We'll do another one over here. This is a terrible, terrible drawing.
Synaptic gap.
Yep, so we're going to do that. So this is a synaptic gap, which is what Bob just said. And around the synaptic gap, there's several corridors. Like this is a nerve and trying to send a message to another nerve to carry it down the train track of our body. So we have this thing that goes around it, and it goes like this. And there's going to be another one over here. And I'm gonna pull this border away right here. And it does not join, but you guys can see the inference of the goo that's still here. This is all gooey and milky. And because of that, give me another color. No, I don't like that. Because of that, we have these charges that are going this way and messagings that are going this way. And it's saying, hey, so-and-so needs their heart to beat right. And you go, okay, let's see the heart beating right. And that message gets sent back and forth. As we have oxidation, as we have damage, as we have stress, this starts to pull back if there's damage. And so when this pulls back and this goes here, what's going to happen with the corridor in between? There's not going to be any gel. Like just say the gel comes to here. The gel's like in this range. Then there's nothing here. Then these are jumping the ship. And so what's going to happen at first is we're going to have these nerve impulses going off to the side and going all over the place, i.e. frazzled nerves, that firing, that misfiring of that corridor. And eventually it's just going to stop, and this is going to dry up and die, and this is going to shrivel back and you have a dead nerve. And so that milky oat top is specific to making this goo go back around properly, this myelin sheaths work properly, and to reconnect or help to salvage and restore the damage and the stress that's already there. It's very, very best if you, of course, get it before it gets to that point. But we've seen major, major, major effect from the milky oat tops in that milky state. So one of the things that I use this for is something like a Parkinson's or an MS, where we clearly have a misfiring or a multiple firing or exaggeratory firing. I've also used it when we have neuropathy and we have things that have like nerves have been cut. And a good example is I've had multiple knee surgeries. So on the one side and fake parts, I could stick a pin, I could jab a pin in the one side of my knee here. Clearly it's been cut so many times that it didn't rejoin properly, both topically and internally. If I guide to that area, I start to get the tingling and the feeling back like my leg was asleep. So my nerves are clearly trying to make new corridors and new pathways. So we see this over and over and over and over. That's the milky oat tops, the milky part. So we use it for all kinds of nervous system disorder. Frazzled is very specific. Frazzled, firing, nerves that feel damaged, when you feel dry, when you feel that your nervous system is undernourished, where we have injury. Heat. Yeah, fatigue, heat, anxiety. This is when you use that milky oat top. But then the hierarchy of that, if you can't get that, it doesn't matter. That's why everybody says no carbs, no carbs, no carbs, but you can have oatmeal. Like always, that's the safe version of like you could always have the oatmeal. So as we go down the rabbit hole, dry milky oat tops, so dry milk oat seed, I'll show it to you. Oat straw, very different. I'm gonna pull.
Oat straw is a no-brainer.
Oat milk.
And then
Any of those things.
oatmeal, it's all right. It's better than nothing.
I'm gonna pull this in so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So the other way I like to think about this. So this is the oat seed.
Oh, as long as we're talking nerves. Let's do that next.
It's usually milky. This one's dry. That's how we can start. And this is the oat straw. So this is together, that an oak hangs off and goes, oh, and this is the part I'm wanting to use for your brain, and this is the part I'm wanting to use for the rest of your body to guide it, like your spinal cord. So it's not inappropriate to have both of them in your life and just to eat them like you would any other vegetable or food. So I just wanted you guys to get to see what I was talking about. Because sometimes, you know,
I have a question about the straw.
Yeah.
Is that like the straw? Well,
yeah, the shaft.
It's the leaf on it though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just literally what would come
It's
off the
chopped
back
off
of the
leaf.
tree.
Yeah.
And we do have some that are so we grab all the seeds and harvest the seeds, and then what's left is strong, but basic.
So, I'm going to say a bad word, St. John's wort. We don't mean to ever fearmonger people about St. John's wort. It is a lovely herb. It is a beautiful herb. The flowers are bright, sunny spots as they open up. They're little yellow flowers with the stamens almost like fireworks coming out. The downside of St. John, and by the way, it grows here. It's a different species than is the herb of commerce. The downside of St. John's wort is that it will interact with about 50% of all prescription medications, to include antidepressants and anti-anxieties and birth control. I'll leave it at that. That's enough scaries with that. All of that said, it's a wonderful herb. It's not amazing for depression. Its primary use is damage to nerves. Envision that in any way you like. Anything from neuropathy, nerve pain, and the numbness in the feet, from anything from diabetes to chemotherapy. It can be used topically as an oil. Topically, it's not an issue for herb drug interactions, only internally, only if you're drinking it or eating it is it an issue with the drugs.
Let me say
Okay, and it's not the herb for depression, it's for melancholia, where you have kind of this ho-hum, there's a dark cloud that follows me around. I've heard it described as Eeyore herb.
So something I want to say about St. John's wort, because it's been given like a bad name. It wasn't until about 20 years ago that we would have ever said that it was good for depression at all. What it is a restorative to the nervous system. There's a highfalutin fancy word for it, but it's a really good restorative to the nervous system, and it works as a reparative to damaged nerves or nerves that are under stress, i.e. dehydrated, gel, chased by the dinosaur all the time, like that kind of thing. So we would have used it almost as a nervine or a nootropic. We would have used it to restore what would have considered to be damaged or frazzled nerve system. And so with that thought process, you can think if somebody's very, very stressed and in pain all the time, they would feel a little glum and ho-hum and sad and tired, i.e. it could be misconstrued as helping with depression. But really, it just restored your body system and got you out of pain, so you feel happier because you're no longer in this bad condition. So it's something to think about when we read books from about 100 years ago. That's the way it would have been talked about. And that's the way it's spoke about as a restorative for your nervous system.
I don't know.
Any questions about that or the milky oats? Because we didn't really get any questions. You guys are so quiet. Usually I'm for real. No, I'm just kidding. Do you have a question for Maya? Okay.
So I have many questions. Yes, sir.
So where would you like a good source of milk if you have a patient that's Parkinson's?
Okay. So here.
Okay.
No, we're going to give you an idea. Well, Moses is saying here, so we're going to give you an idea with this. Because tomorrow morning, I teach 101 for normal people. And so this is one of the first things that I show them my police teacher now. We have wonderful, wonderful herb companies. We've been on the floor of the formulation labs of these herb companies. And they're the ones that you'll go out and buy. And when you open their on the bottle labeled milky oat seed or milky oat type, you'll pull out a perfectly beautifully clear, the way every American wants tincture. Because it doesn't have goo in it and mess. And so that would not be my first tip. So there's several ways that you can do it. You can ask us if we have any. It's something that is better than gold, and so it's very difficult to keep it. Or you can go to a small company, and when they run out, they run out. And we do have a small company that we recommend, and they are second to none to it, and that would be Red Moon Herbs. So Red Moon Herbs, it's a small little company in it's in Black Mountain, the Appalachians. And Red Moon has second to none the best that I can possibly find. But I can also give you the source, and you can get on the list of getting a pound of your own and the overnight at Crush. There's two places I would go for that, and that would be the Backwoods Farms, which will literally hand brew everything, hand harvest, family owned, and Healing Spirits. So Healing Spirits Farms.
Yeah, it's funny. We usually get about 10 or 20 pounds from Zach. And there was one year we were like waiting. It was like any day now that shipment's going to show up. And there was a major flood storm, total crop failure 2 years ago.
2 years in a row we had crop failure. And so we've been stretching them about for a while. I have a batch at home, yes.
So you have a friend and they're telling all you.
Yeah.
Okay, St. John's Wort. Like they're gonna expect all Americans that I take this and tell me an hour, right?
That's not what's going to happen, and that's not something I would recommend oats before I work on the St. John's for building quality. I really would look to see my very first thing I would say with anybody that has any kind of I just feel down if it's like the dog did die yesterday and they should feel down.
Right.
Really water and then food and the aspect of mineralization. So if they're not, I hate to say this because of the climate of our group, and you'll see when I say what I mean. If you're not eating blood and bones, you don't build blood and bones. And so if you're not heavy supplementing, your digestion isn't working right and you're a vegan, then you're going to be more likely to feel sad eventually. If you are supplementing and your belly's working correctly, you have all those enzymes and processes going on, we can kind of fake you into a meat protein. And so we can. So if you feel like you have iron, heavy things in your body, you feel sturdy and strong and like you can stand on your own 2 feet. And if you don't, then you start to feel sleepy and like you are kind of like dropping in the elevator and a little bit off.
And as a general, like if I use St. John's Wort occasionally for clients, never if they're on prescription drugs.
Never.
Like I don't even bother to look P450, yada, yada, yada. I don't care. If they're on a prescription drug, it's not safe. I usually start at around 1 gram. You can go up to 5 grams 2 to 3 times a day. But what I find is more common, because when we talk melancholia, seasonal affective disorder, it's more often it's a vitamin D issue. And so if you've ever heard of SAD, seasonal affective disorder, I was going to say that later, but the vitamin D levels are, as a general rule, all of us have too low a vitamin D. The range when we do blood work is like 30 or 32 to 100. And that's like, yay, I got a D- on my immune system, my emotional health, and everything else. I want an A+ on that one. So I don't think I've ever had a client with cancer that didn't have down in the 20s or single digits with their, most of my folks dealing with depression have low vitamin D, and most doctors don't test it unless you ask. They're usually happy to do it if they ask. I shoot for above 50. My ideal is between 70 and 90. On St. John's Wort.
Over something in their head and read through your life and woe is me, I would add passion to it. Both of those are kind of drawing. And how is the St. John's?
I was going to say in formula, yeah. It's another.
If the building's not uptaking it right, just like the meds, it's not going to uptake right. So I do a little bit of a conversation, but I would go as high as 10 because of those reasons. We don't get almost to the. What was your question?
We don't. You can actually order your own blood work. Yeah, and so you could bring those to us. The insurance doesn't pay for it when I order it. So it's just like, go to your GP, and it's a good thing to get your GP to order blood work and do their things. We read it differently than they do. We tend to, I probably follow a more functional medicine approach than I do just the regular review of like, oh, nothing's out of range. No. Interesting thing about blood work just in general, always make sure you're hydrated when you go and get your blood work. Dehydration will give you false good blood work. So I've found a number of people where I'm just like, I know you only drink like 2 cups of water a day, and they went and got their blood work. And remember, it's 12 hours fasting usually prior to. They're so dehydrated that all of their values show normal in their blood work, and it's a serious issue.
So what God's talking about is if you have a quart of water and you have a quart of water, that's what it looks like. If you take half that water out, now all of a sudden that water's packed.
Cup looks full.
The cup looks full.
So if
So
you
that's what your blood
somebody who's anemic and has anxiety because of it or depression, who's also dehydrated, will actually, when I was like, I'm pretty sure you're anemic, they'll go and get their blood tested and it'll show normal.
most people who go to the doctor, sometimes they're almost sick, and so the value keeps going down. The other thing that goes on the public norm throughout a large period of time, and we know what the FDA says about things like eggs will fill your eggs won't, eggs will fill your eggs won't, type of thing. And so that trend changes, and that number, like it used to be that we needed 75 to 100, and now they're left to respond to the 30. Bob said to me jokingly, probably 7 years ago, like he was my practitioner, I wasn't here, he said jokingly to me, I need to have your vitamin D because if it's like 30, you're dead. It was 32. And my doctor told me it was okay. And he was like, holy crap.
It was in range.
Yeah, it was like, something's wrong. It was in range. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at it and we're going to see if you're following this trend this way or this way, or if we expect them to be steered and they're not, or they're up together and up down. And we'll read through it like I talked about. It's not, like I don't like the range thing. If everything is 0.01 over the range, oh yeah, you're fine. No, you're freaking cracks up low. This is exhausting. For you, the other thing is getting a baseline. If you just get regular blood work like at least once a year, then you know for you it's not correct.
What's your norm?
And a good example is my blood pressure. I run the blood pressure, so my high blood pressure is 110 over 85. Like I usually run about 85 over 55. So that when I get to normal, they say my blood pressure is great, I'm like crazy high blood pressure. So they'll tell me I'm fine. And they're like, well, that's 40 points over what it's supposed to be. And I can hear my gut. So maybe not so much. And so ordering it with cups is a brand new thing. And you'll see your prices just outright. And AFC, the walk-in lab, will do as well. And they'll just, it's a walk-in medical clinic. And they'll tell you ahead of time what a full panel is going to be or what a CBC or a hormone panel will be.
And you can go to Quest, there's like mybloodwork.com, things like that. There's a bunch if you just Google it. They have specials. So.
And you do have access to a medical record, so like general practitioners.
Yeah.
And that's something else that's an issue because people don't understand. Oh, yes. Yeah, no. I had somebody, I asked for blood work from somebody 3 years ago, and they're like, well, I'll try. I'm like, what do you mean you'll try? Because they need that. Come home, have blood. What do you mean? Like, try. Like, give me the phone number.
So,
yeah.
Rose.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any. So, obviously somebody's had it before. So, it's funny, rose is an herb that's not talked about a lot. And it's funny, we talk about rose hips, it's like, oh, that's full of vitamin C and it's good for your immune system. And yes, it is. It's full of bioflavonoids, whatever. But roses, we've used those, I think Shakespeare has a rose or two that he mentions in his time. So literally for as long as we've been talking about emotions and spirituality and things like that, we've used rose as a symbol of love, of forgiveness, to heal a broken heart. Guess what we use roses for? Heal a broken heart. And so it can be, this is something that nourishes and heals. Yeah, right. And it has a it's gentle. And what I would say is it also tastes good, especially when Renee puts it all up inside the honey.
No, we I made this. I had this jackass. I hope he's watching. I had this jackass client who was.
Let's stay over this way so they can hear.
I had a jackass client who was a Marine vet, and there was like this big boisterous older fella who wasn't gonna listen to nothing from no one type of thing, but he was standing there in front of me, and I get called a little missy by these people a lot, and was trying to figure out how to get heart medicine to him. He literally needed some cardiac medicine, and thought it was important, since he refused to change anything, that this be the sweetener for the coffee in the morning is one of the ways. So I made a cardiac formula and put it into the honey. And that's when I first started doing this for real as therapeutic dosing. The amount of rose that's in that honey, they're eating honey infused rose infused honey, is therapeutic. It's tantamount to bitter almost once it gets in your mouth. That it's lovely, it's delightful. And so it's just something to know that it's true cardiac medicine. The other thing is cardiac invokes the thought process of blood and healing and muscles, like red tissue. I would straight up use this on a burn the way it is, because it's going to knit things back together. It's an antimicrobial. It helps to cinch things up, clears away any kind of extra phlegm. It's a little bit drying on the end of it, you can see. And it's something that is cardiac medicine as well as knitting tissue back together, including cardiac. The rose petals in particular, I feel are soft and kind of like hold your heart and give you a space to be upset and take care of it and heal that wound. Rose buds go right to the point where it's the band-aid off. And so like that's the way to think about it as well. The ones that are in here right now are rose petals, so it's a little bit of softer medicine, but it totally does its job. Any complaints about the rose? It's so flipping good. I forget how good it is.
Cacao.
Cacao.
Cacao is where chocolate comes from.
Well, let's talk about cacao a little bit. I told you that I am trained to be a traditional healer, and one of the areas that I'm trained in is Amazonian medicine by tribes in the Amazon. And cacao, in its true sense, in the pod form, is responsible for all that is life. They eat every single part of it. They eat the covering that's around it. They eat, if anybody needs it back, we'll do a second round. You just have to raise your hand. They believe that it opens the mind of the heart. They believe that it's connective to that tissue. It has chemicals in it that will allow your brain to respond appropriately to love and affection and awareness. It's considered to be a seed that's like, you can't see it right now because we don't have the picture, but the seed of it looks like what Rocio, one of my teachers, would say is sperm. So she's always saying when we're out, Renee, you know, it helps with the, and I have to be like, oh, we're in front of like an English group and I have to tell them what this means, and what she means is good for erections. I'm like, son of a bitch, yeah. And so it's great and fun, but it gives us an idea of what she's talking about, that it's the seed, like it's nourishing enough to produce another human, to nourish your seeds of fertility. And that's what she's trying to say by that. And so it's something that's just a yes. I will tell you that it's drying. So it's one of the things that, as well as it can fix, can cause the same reaction if you drink too much of it or eat too much of it. And cacao in ceremony always has a mix with it of nourishing things like cayenne or peppers that are in the area. And it's prepared in a way to try to repair or balance out that dryness so that you can drink a lot of it. It's good for open-heartedness. It's good for awareness, so good spontaneous brain thinking. So we think of the nervous system here, and it's literally a cardiac medicine. So when people are craving, remember Bob's response to the HPA access in the woman that's having PMS and they're craving chocolate specifically, like it's a thing. Like really, they're trying to fix what's going on. True cacao is also bitter, and that's the taste. There's bitter taste receptors on the heart. That's the taste and flavor of the heart is bitter. Your bitter, bitter heart. Like that's why we say things like that.
Always an interesting thing. I had a woman who came in a couple of weeks ago, and she asked for cacao. She's like, but it had to be Dutched cacao or not Dutched or whatever. And she needs some.
Right there?
No, it's empty. It's
Oh, coconut tops.
um, and I was like, why are you doing this? She's like, my neurologist told me to come in and he wanted me to drink coffee and do cacao, but it was chocolate, not cacao. He didn't really understand the difference. And I'm going to just guess the neurologist doesn't know a lot about herbs.
I Googled it.
And so I'm sure there's a research study out there that said caffeine helped with brain issues, and she was dealing with not Parkinson. She was
MS?
no, she was dealing with age-related memory loss. And so here is a mistake we've all made at some point, probably. If we talk about cacao, it has caffeine in it. Well, that's bad. It's going to keep you awake, right? Well, wait, it also has L-theanine in it. And theobromine, which just like with green tea, it has a counterpoint that it has a relaxing effect. And the reason people like chocolate during their meds is because it's high in magnesium. So that means you're magnesium deficient. Why don't you crave horsetail or magnesium? Yeah. So by isolating chemicals out of a plant that has 10,000 chemicals is wrought with mistakes.
Yeah, so let's real quick, because Bob put rodeo up there already.
That was my next
From the traditional healing standpoint, let's real quick go to the fact that right now in 2019, we just came out with a study that says they think they might understand how aspirin works. And so this is the kind of thought process that I want everybody to think about. When plants start with 10,000 plus chemicals, for us to isolate one just so that we can patent it and make some money and say we know that this is what's working in here is ludicrous at best. That we are fooling ourselves to think that we have any sense of an understanding of what the hell is going on with any of this stuff, that we try our very best, and the more we know nothing. And so this is the case, especially with the cacao, because one of the things it does, I'm taught, and I wasn't going to go into this, but Bob actually opened the door. I'm sure that he's feeling sad about it because I'm still talking. But I know, but we're going to do this anyways because somebody has to hear it. So one of the things that I was in charge of and have been in charge of for probably more than 15 years, I don't really know to count, is to hold a space for ceremony of traditional healing from the South American cultures, Peruvian and Ecuadorian and Colombian, but to hold that space, that included breath work and ceremonies of different kinds of plants. But one of the things that was a must and had to happen every single day is that I had to brew up cacao when we did this, and everybody had to have cacao throughout the day to give the heart the endurance and the mind the endurance to make the changes it was supposed to have. And I have had visions and hallucinations and severe Band-Aids being ripped off of healing from only the cacao, because I was the one holding the container. So I was preparing the food in the cacao, but in no way was I doing the plant spirit medicine because I was there to protect everybody. So when I drink cacao now, when you guys come to my house, if you ever come to the house for ceremonies, like we do ceremonies that everybody is invited to, and fire ceremonies, so you have a fire. When we do that, if I ever make you cacao, I have to warn you, even if we're using it for painting, we use it for tumors, we use it for painting our body, for stuck items. I'm taught to use it like medicine on your body. When we do that, I tend to hallucinate, not in a way that I don't know that I'm standing here talking to you. Like I'll see pretty colors going across the screen, or you'll have your aura halo that's on it. And I'm just a normal person who ate a lot of chocolate. That's all I am. But I made it the ceremonial way, and I stirred it the right way, and I was sniffing it and probably tasting it too much.
You don't get it from Milky.
And we smuggled it in. Well, you may, depends on how good that Milky Way is. But I've smuggled it in from the jungle, from the Amoy, from the jungle where we grew it, and we were there, and it's Incan and it's special and yada yada. And everyone says, "Why does your taste different?" I said, "Because I smuggled it in and yelled at TSA for it." And so absolutely, it shows. But my point is, it's still just a pot of flippin' chocolate. But that's what happens when it's right. And so that's the process of getting the right food and getting the right medicine and understanding what our broccoli is supposed to taste like. Like everything's supposed to be powerful. Our bodies are supposed to be able to heal, and those plants know what they're doing, even if we don't. And so taking it in its whole form and not isolating a constituent, that poor neurologist was totally right and on the right way. And I use it for all of my Parkinson's, MS, muscular dystrophy, early onset on Alzheimer's and dementia. All of those people get cacao in formula, like in the honey and in different ways. And so he was right. He just didn't know why. So I will definitely help to fire those synapses properly and to see those colors again and to remember where the keys are for sure. But it's got to be in the right way. Snickers just ain't going to do it. The other thing to say about that before I sign off and let Bob continue to talk is the white men of the world, and I love me some white men, so I'm not being mean. They're the ones that are solely responsible for all of the chocolate right now. And it's the same people that invaded a couple hundred years ago South America and with force and guns took from them their chocolate. And there's only one field of Incan chocolate that I know of growing in the existence of all of Ecuador, let alone South America right now. One. And so that's the thought process to it. That every time that you guys come to the house and you've tasted it and it tastes different than every other cacao you got, it's for a reason. So we have to try really, really hard to keep that in South America, pulling up the minerals and the nourishment from that soil so that we continue to have that, because it's not reproducible in the greenhouse. They're trying really hard. So families like Nestle that also are Coca-Cola and also they are Monsanto and also BP type of thing. So just think about where you're getting your chocolate from when you go to buy it. It's worth a little bit of extra money. Yeah. MS, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, early onset dementia, dementia that's triggered, or Alzheimer's that are triggered and are thought by anesthesia or by a lack of absorption of beef, like gut health. Like, and I'm saying this because Scott knows what I'm talking about because we've had conversations about that. So anytime I think that it's inappropriate, like I used it on somebody who had the onset of Parkinson's in their 20s, so early 20s, which is like a death sentence. Not that Parkinson's kills, but that early they're going to freeze up. And so it would just not. So things that are not expected, it's not somebody who's in their 90s, which I will in their 90s, but it's not. Usually they're too dry. And so it's somebody where this doesn't look right. They've been exposed to heavy metals. So I think there's actual nerve damage. So we're getting a tic or a spasm or a misfiring where they're labeled as epileptic seizures. And I don't think it's actually epileptic seizures. So I think there's something else that's chemical exposure. And we do see it, especially with nutrients being deprived. There's a whole host of pilots coming out of World War II that had their stomach disruption dealt with by freezing their acid or taking a part of their stomach. That's just the way they did it. And those men are coming up with the early onset, not anymore, but they did 20 years ago, the early onset of these things. And they think it's because of lack of deabsorption, and they just caught it too slowly. And so with those people, I try to reconnect with a series of these things. Sorry. Ta-da! Rhodiola. All right.
No worries. So rhodiola is rose root that has no relationship whatsoever to roses. It's actually a very low-growing Scandinavian plant, but it smells like roses.
I'm looking for it.
No, I mean there's some in the clinic, but and I pulled most of the herbs.
I know.
Yeah. So rhodiola is one of these herbs that's an adaptogen, and it works. You know, I mentioned that kidney heart energy where we had PTSD, where we had some fear and fright, but the anxiety, the insomnia was going on. Rhodiola is particularly good when we have that high stress with anxiety, but I'll put a caveat on there. It's really, really drying. So if you're going to use that on somebody, they ought to be really phlegmy too. So really thin, wiry people should not do rhodiola unless you're putting a whole crap ton of other herbs in there. You have a, oh no, I thought you were raising your hand. Yes, Scott. Yes. Sorry, that's advanced Chinese stuff. It's a really common herb, and there's like adrenal formulas out there. It's one of the more common ones that they use. The downside is quality varies tremendously, so it should be stinky like a rose. It's stinky like a rose?
No.
In general, when we look at adaptogens like rhodiola, it's long term. Probably the thing we look for with rhodiola is watch for constipation. That's usually how it shows up, or like big increase in thirst, but it's usually constipation.
So I don't want to open a can of worms, but several of my students are in here, and I do this plant spirit medicine thing with them. And sometimes I use rhodiola. I don't know if any of you guys have rhodiola for the plant spirit medicine. Is that you? Do you guys use rhodiola? You don't have to, but if you want, this is radiola. If you want to just take a piece of it. Does anybody want to say anything about that experience at all? Yes.
I'll just say it for life changing. From an energetic perspective, it was very grounding, very uplifting.
It's a root that shines up with a beautiful flower. Yep.
And it just clicked.
Mhm.
Root,
Nice.
ground.
Yeah. And then it got to do this in the ground. Yeah.
I could go on about so that's all I will say.
So
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So that experiment, they're not allowed to touch it or smell it or taste it. They just sit in front of it. And that's what he's getting from sitting in front of it. Yeah.
In my experience, before it even sat in front of me. It
Yeah.
was very, the gates opened and it was very, very, very emotional. Like
Yeah.
hugely,
It's heart healing.
very, very.
Yeah. The gates.
powerful.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it now, I'm just like, I just, there it goes.
Yeah. Scott.
You mentioned it. Have it part of it, and this helps to reconnect that.
It's a piece of the puzzle.
It would need to be informative because of the drying and the kidney.
So it'd be important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Scott, it grows in rocky places. It wiggles its way in. It's super strong. It sticks its butt down into rocky, non-energetically pleasing places, and then shoots green twigs up with a bright, beautiful flower reaching towards the sun. So it allows you to do that. It allows you to have that energy go up without feeling that anxiety of floating, like it anchors you down into a non-fertile place. So thinking about anchoring down into that kidney that may not be ready for it, and it going up and healing the heart that way. It's a good one. It's a weird
So
one.
ashwagandha is another adaptogen. So this is something else helping you adapt to stress. It's an Ayurvedic herb from India. You can grow it here. Except it's the root, so you have to kill your plant in order to harvest the medicine. So I usually just buy it. And ashwagandha is an interesting one. If you read very much on it, everything will conflict. And it's good for fertility. It's bad during pregnancy. It's anti-fertility. It's stimulating. It should be used for sleep. And so you get that a lot with adaptogens. The magic is in the dosage, but I'll put an asterisk next to it. This is probably one of the most common herbs out there. It's referred to as Indian ginseng. It's not ginseng-like at all, except for its role in adaptogens. It's in the nightshade family. So it's in the Solanaceae family. So if you have a food sensitivity to potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, you may very well have an adverse reaction to this. So when you're supposed to feel good and relaxed and sound sleep with adaptogens, and you're wired and uncomfortable and digestion upset, you might have a nightshade issue. So a very small number of people have sensitivities to nightshades, maybe 5% of the population. But every once in a while, I find somebody who does. I make sure they're not taking this because ridiculous numbers of people take this. Yeah.
So with my Hashimoto's, I was told to avoid nightshades.
So don't overthink that. The easiest way to figure out if you're sensitive to nightshades, because Hashimoto's and nightshades can have a relationship, but don't necessarily. Eliminate all the nightshades from your diet for 2 or 3 weeks, and then eat them all in one meal. If you feel like shit, you have a sensitivity to nightshades. You won't die from it. But the reality is, I don't find a lot of people sensitive to nightshades. Most people can eat all of them with no problems whatsoever. But every once in a while, I'll give you an example. We had a client in student clinic that came in really red faced, almost looked like rosacea, weird shoulder pain, and he came in and he was actually getting acupuncture. I think we were getting herbs as well. And we took us about 6 weeks. All the redness in his face was gone, and he'd had for most of his life. Shoulder got better, yada yada yada. And all of a sudden, he came back in, and we're like, "What the heck?" It was 100% back. And he was like, he hadn't even noticed. He was standard dude. He doesn't notice anything. Oh, my arm fell off. Darn. So the reality was, I went right to the food. I was like, "Tell me what you had for to eat yesterday," and there was nothing out of the ordinary. I said, "What do you have to eat today?" And literally 2 or 3 hours before we had seen him, his wife had made baba ganoush, eggplant, and this was not a normal part of their diet. And literally, I'm going to say I'm 90% sure. We actually haven't seen him. He was off on a trip. I'm 90% sure that it was the nightshade that was causing that inflammation. Because most of us, like, we all like tomatoes and tomato sauce and green peppers and other peppers, like super normal part of our diet. And some people are only sensitive to some nightshades and not all of them. Depending on how potatoes are stored, the more light exposure a potato has, the higher amount of the chemical solanase that's in there, that's the inflammatory stuff. And most of it accumulates in the skin. So it's like, eh. So do you need to stay away from that? Do an experiment, you'll find out. It's usually not horribly unpleasant. You'll have an uncomfortable day. And then you're like, maybe I should do that.
I don't. I'm not awesome.
Yeah.
I don't have. Bob's had more than me, but I've only had one reaction in 26 years.
Not her personally,
No.
clients.
A client, and it was somebody who was allergic, like truly allergic to nightshade, not intolerant. And it was oh my goodness, to you, that's all.
Right. So ashwagandha, if you tend to be anxious during the day, ashwagandha can be used in the daytime. For people who have a hard time getting to sleep at night that feel unsettled, tossing and turning, you can use ashwagandha at night. So it is a nourishing and slightly relaxing, and I would say works on both the kidney and heart energy.
Not a cup of tincture, just a cup of actual. And so, because I can restore it, like I didn't just need the chill. And the handful of things you just told me much at the beginning, because of stress, it was an adrenal response that has some ashwagandha in there. And here I'm still talking to you and way over the dosing.
All right, we only got like 15 minutes left or so, so I'm gonna oh my god, I can't talk about it.
Not to say anything.
Okay, kava rocks. If you are on liver challenging, for those of you who are like, yeah, I don't really enjoy getting drunk like I used to, kind of thing, there should be more kava parties in the world. My easy way of describing kava is it's kind of like having a glass or two of wine without the stupid. It's like nobody's wearing lampshades on their head with kava. This is the root of a piper plant from the South Pacific, from Hawaii south. It tastes like crap. It will make your mouth go numb. It's a little creepy. It has the unique quality that it's reverse tolerance. The more you do it, the less you need. Where most things you build tolerance to, and you have to take more and more and more. A little bit goes a long way. You can do it either in a capsule, or you can go to a kava bar and get some kava. Yay! You can make your own. It is a fat-soluble substance in there that we usually look for the anti-anxiety. So I like making it in coconut milk, but you could do it in water. Just you need a little bit more of the kava. It is both an antispasmodic, i.e. shoulders, neck, back spasm, anything like that. It's lovely. It's an anti-anxiety. If you do too much, you should not operate a vehicle. Like, it can be inebriating, without a doubt.
Why would it cause a problem?
Energetically, it's oddly drying. For like a lot of the kava tenders of the kava bars and stuff, they actually get like dry, cracked hands from working the kava. Depending on who makes it, it can cause either constipation or diarrhea.
The reason why
I'm trying to think of the other side effects that we see.
would have it in the fat, and the traditional reason it was made the reason why you want it, because it's helping to counteract that, but it's nourishing at the same time. So it's less imperative that you don't take capsules, that you use it help it at that. The other thing is, if you're immediately getting diarrhea upon taking it out of the kava bar, moving like cheaper way to do it. And I only speak on that because I know them. And so there's no hating that. They would happily tell me. And so that's something to think about as well. That if it's differently brewed and if it's just homemade, it almost never has the side effects. The other thing is, just like with cacao, it's not a Snickers bar, it's ceremonial. So if you're using it the same way you have used cake or vodka or any other thing in your life, then it's going to have the same detriment and reactions as you. And so we have people who tell horror stories about kava, and we're like, no, it's not the kava, it's the person using it. So some things like everything in formula is important. Yes.
And it's like, that's something about have a problem drinking it, not do, is that like.
No, drinking alcohol.
Like, if you drink alcohol.
You definitely shouldn't do them at the same time. But if you're putting down a 2 liter of vodka every day, you should not be using kava, even when you're not. I'm not sure how you could not be drunk at that time.
The other key question is like, you should not wait. If you go try it at.
No, that's fine. I've heard people like, oh, I went and drank 20 shells of kava. That's like I went to the bar and just did 20 shots. You probably should find a friend to drive you home. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've seen people literally say, oh, the bartender said this will not impair my motor vehicle skills.
Well, then he's not.
And yeah, they are damn liars because I've watched people drop. Like
this is a tender one.
Yeah.
Because I've been to blue eye.
Well, so you would have to, for your own size, know your tolerance.
No, I mean like what you said. Some.
Oh no, blue is fine. They wouldn't do that.
Most of them are good, and the few that we found out were doing that, we smacked them upside the head.
We encourage them since we know.
It's funny. There
Yeah.
is the largest concentration of kava and grana bars here in St. Pete in particular, but in the Tampa Bay region, other than in the South Pacific. Right? This is the greatest concentration in the country, if not the world, outside of its hometown. There's a thematic bar for whatever you're into. I just found out there's actually a goth kava bar now. I had no idea. I was just like, I still want to go there now. So I don't know if there's a country and western one. If anybody's looking to open up.
And so the alcohol thing going on, all plants and all foods have a propensity to go to a certain organ search. And so if you're already dealing with dehydration or problems with like if you were trading that for the drink, like if you were coming off of alcohol because of that, then it would be taxing on your liver. And you didn't know that it was on the good part because that has powder. So it might be some of the parts, which is the part that causes the most problems. But as a tincture, we sell it out in alcohol all of the time and use it as an emergency medicine in a wonderful way. If you were having pain, back issues, inside issues, block those, right? But you're not, a bottle that big. So, yeah.
I think just you go there, they'll say, do you want mind, body, or
It's just like with any plant, like
There's different plant parts, and so whether it's in different areas that it's growing, but like either the root or the lateral roots that they grow. And I personally haven't noticed that dramatic of a difference. I know people.
I also think it's like cannabis.
And there's I have 20 more hours I want to talk about. I'm not going to, sorry. But I want to give you a couple of self-care techniques that are super, super helpful. Oh yeah, we'll get into that. So within Chinese medicine, we have microsystems. So reflexology, where the bottom of your foot's reflective of your whole body. We use the ear. And so quick way to just oh my God, I'm stressing out, I'm dying. You're literally going to get a full body massage. If you start at your earlobe, that's your head actually. Go along the outside, then go along that inner rim, like right in here, and then get up in every fold and then massage the floor of the ear. If you literally do that, you're going to feel kind of this weird chill relaxation that is literally stress relief. Remember way back 2 hours ago, I mentioned the vagus nerve and vagal tone? You access the vagal nerve through the ear. There's a branch of the vagus nerve that you can literally stimulate by messing with that. So I know a few massage therapists who actually do that to end their massage. I was like, oh, hell, I could have saved an hour. No. So there's also a couple of acupressure points that you can stimulate that will also access the vagal nerve. So behind the ear, if you open your jaw, your finger, and it kind of hurts when you press in there. And if you get bored, you can Google Sanjiao 17. That's a channel that doesn't really exist in the real world. So massaging this is also the point for hiccups. So you can press this point and stop most cases of hiccups, specifically when it's a vagal nerve issue. We just did that at the Kratom Rise Up and Sweetwater Farms. Belly button, bottom of your ribs, the xiphoid process, halfway in between. There's a point, there's going to be a couple of Ren points. Oh. If you forget these, just Google them and they'll. So Ren 12, this one is when stress is affecting your digestion, bloating, belching, acid reflux, anything digestive. Belly button, top of the pubic bone, halfway in between. Oh. Ren 4, and don't do this one in public. Ren 1, right here. Find a friend to do that for you. all of those access the vagus nerve. You know what's really crazy? That's Chinese CPR. We actually use that for drowning. So next time you see somebody drowning on the beach, grab their swim trunks, pull them down, and take your thumb. No, don't do that. You're going to jail. Yeah, that's it. I'm just going to come back to kill you. The other thing is the belly breathing. I always say one of the most effective things that any of us can learn that will fix half of what we have going on, because remember, stress is the cause of all disease. This is easiest done when you're laying on your back with your knees bent. So I tell all my clients, 10 breaths twice a day. In the morning before you roll out of bed, at night as you're trying to go to sleep. Take your thumb, stick it in your belly button, relax your hand, connects the inner lobe into the lower dantian, doesn't matter. The other one goes in the center of your chest. And what's supposed to happen is our diaphragm, when we inhale, is supposed to go down, and we exhale, it's supposed to go up. And the reality is, if I say, take a deep breath, everybody's going to go, your diaphragm didn't move, your shoulders and neck did. And so we're breathing the opposite of what we're supposed to. If we're lifting up to open and engage our air passageways, we're not doing a good job. If our diaphragm goes down in a proper belly breathing, our belly is going to pooch out. It's actually acting as a bellows, moving 2/3 of the lymphatic fluids of our body. Literally 2/3. 1/3 is moved from muscle contraction, exercise. 2/3 from this thing going like this, and sucks 2/3 of the waste products. It's our immune system, all kinds of good stuff that happens from belly breathing. It's also stimulating our digestion, the peristalsis for our guts. So what's supposed to happen, sorry, you guys will get the side view. When we're laying on our back, knees bent, and we breathe, when we inhale, the belly pooches out, the lower hand moves, as opposed to the upper hand moves when I stress breathe. It takes most people 2 weeks to figure out what the hell I'm talking about. The second you stop trying is when it'll work. I'm not pooching my belly out or anything. I'm relaxing. Novel concept.
Is there a video of that?
There is. So this whole thing yapping tonight will be on YouTube, Tradition School of Herbal Studies. But also there's a channel there that's patient information or something. We're going to try to add more to it, but the belly breathing's on there. So that's always a helpful one. When you forget, 10 breaths in the morning before you roll out of bed will help with the anxiety of going into your day. It will also help oxygenate because you're getting about 1/3 more oxygen than you normally do. And at night when you're trying to go to sleep, It's the way you're supposed to breathe. Notice I'm not counting. I'm not holding nostrils, mouth open, closed. I don't give a crap. If you have a little kid, if you have a baby, put a baby on its back, all belly. About the time we hit middle school, when real stress hits our lives, we all switch to this. And we make the massage therapist rich. So don't do this. No. We did those. We didn't say enough about vitamin D. Vitamin D, super important. Maximize your levels of that. I usually start most people at 5,000 IUs daily, and that's when they're in the normal range. If they're below normal range, I usually start with 10,000 IUs daily. Make sure it's D3. Magnesium. Most of us need magnesium. If you have insomnia and constipation and stress in your life, you probably need magnesium. It's particularly good for everything from menstrual cramps to blood sugar to blood pressure to anxiety. There's many forms. Oxide just makes you poop a lot. So if that's the only thing you're working on, magnesium oxide is cheap as hell. It's what's in most people's supplements if you're getting them from not a health food store. That's a nice way to name all the name brands. Citrate has a citric acid molecule smacked onto it. Generally what most folks need if you're tending towards normal, but if I didn't drink enough water, you're going to be constipated. This is fairly well absorbed and reasonably priced. Oh, I can't spell today. Close enough. Glycinate is more expensive, highly absorbable. And so for people with loose stools, they can take this without messing up their bowels, and it will help with helps with muscle spasm, cramping, helps with sleep, normalizes blood pressure, blood sugar. Oxide. Oxide is just poop in her.
So release it off.
Yes.
Like this point. You're looking for the others.
Citrate and glycinate are the preferred forms. There's some other variations other than that. So the long and short of all of this is there's a side effect of long-term stress is everything from the cortisol belly to depression, anxiety. All of this is creating a disharmony in our bodies, whether we call it inflammation, it doesn't matter how we label it. Every system, traditional to modern, has an understanding that stress is bad for us. And, a little bit gets us out of bed. A lot of it will literally kill you over time. So how we manage our stress, and whether it's singing or humming or doing meditation or yoga or Tai Chi, it doesn't matter. As long as we're doing something. The herbs are a part of that. It makes it easier when we look at adaptogens, those things that help us adapt to stress. It minimizes that oxidative stress that it provides, and it helps that process of repairing. And then we can look at those specific things, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but even something as simple as the oats. Those oat tops help to nourish and repair the body, those frazzled nerves that we look at. It oftentimes seems overwhelming when we're being chased by the saber-toothed tiger for our every waking moment, for some folks even in their sleep. The reality is to build up the reserves that have been spent then allows us more and more ability to make those changes that we need to in our life. So it's start with the simple ones. Breathing is cheap and kind of important, I hear. Massaging your ears, you can do that at a stoplight. A little water wouldn't kill you. So starting with those processes can make a bigger difference than you know. Literally, I've had people shift out of a state of almost blind panic just from the stupid belly breathing. So it's a simple starting place to make dramatic changes. Masking it with Haagen-Dazs, alcohol, and other miscellaneous things that are abused that may or may not be legal doesn't really fix anything. It gives you a moment of relaxation, but the reality is it aggravates those problems. So trying to get to those root causes, and we didn't talk about it, but obviously things like counseling, hypnotherapy changes the neural pathways, and the way we deal with things can also be, another tool in your toolbox. And the herbs are really that. They're another tool in the toolbox, and oftentimes super accessible. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I'm going to shut up. But I'm going to say everybody can explore, because I always like to talk about one that you've got here. And so the Florida Bethany, also known as rattlesnake root.
It's a great nervous system.
And Spicus Vegas. Yeah, close enough. There you go.
It's not close enough. Locus floridatus. Floridana.
It's all the same thing.
Yes. So most common name, folklore name, or the Florida cracker name, Stachys floridana is the cool botanical name, Latin name. All parts are food and medicine. It is neurorestorative. The one we hear about the most is wood betony. We consider this a one-for-one replacement, and it grows in your backyard.
All those things that Scott did, all of them, everything.
So the price is right. It's very easy to identify once you find it. There is an old, I don't remember whether it's Celtic or, but European saying from the 1600s, sell your coat to buy betony, i.e. this is more important than staying warm. That betony is for all things that are wrong.
Its flower is perfectly blue, and the coats and the druid medicine and the Viking medicine, the first thing that comes out of the nervous system plants, and it pops up a blue or purple.
No, we didn't have any handouts for this one.
So it's suffering. Okay, is that it?
I think we'll let you all escape. If anybody's got any questions, holla. But if not, thank you all for giving up Friday evening. I hope we see you in another class someday soon. So many herbs we didn't get to. Thank you all for signing on. Oh yeah, for anybody, this will be on the YouTube channel, so subscribe, because we try to do really good about once a week trying to post something on YouTube and make it educational. Bye all. Thanks for tuning in. See if I missed any questions here on the chatty thing. Oh, you're welcome. We'll see you. Nah, it's all right. It's the usual cast of characters. I don't know if anybody wants to buy herbs or anything up there. We got a bunch of $2 bags bagged up. I'm gonna try to answer questions. Hey, Eva. Oh. So here in the clinic, we also got a full apothecary. So we pre-bagged a couple of bags of ashwagandha, cacao, a whole bunch of other things. So anything anybody wanted, oftentimes after class, we make it quick and easy for them. But with over 800 herbs here in the apothecary, people are always welcome to come in and get any herbs that they know they want. But if you want something for a particular disorder, we always say, get an appointment. You look like you had a question. Bonus if you bring, like if you have blood work, any of your supplements, anything like that, always bring those with you. With prescriptions, we don't need to see them because those are standardized. With the herbs, there's a lot of crap out there. So we always say supplements and herbs, bring them in. And we love blood work. But yeah, definitely call and make an appointment for one of the student clinics. The acupuncture one is booked out pretty tight, so that's the hardest one to get into. The herbal ones, because there's 3 nights of those, it's easier to get into. But, yeah. Yeah. And either Renee or I or both of us sit there and like make sure our students don't kill anybody. So.
I just wanted to know more about it. I was
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah. No, the more information, the better. You'll never give us too much information. So. Yeah. You're welcome. What up, Scott? Yeah, I haven't chased anybody off here yet.
I know you want to. You told me what you're looking for.
I know. Discovering new ones every day. I haven't been to that one. I haven't been to most of them, honestly. I'm lazy. I go to the close ones. I did meet the owners of the Speakeasy one. The wife is an acupuncturist, I believe, and just opened up a clinic. And so that I found in general, they're all a lot of fun. It's just kind of what's your mood. Yeah. Go to them all in one night. No, don't do that. That's right. That's right. That's right. No, I've only been to like Mad Hatter's, Bula, and yes, thank you. Those are the other ones I've been to. I like them all. Yes, it's awesome. They have fun. No. Yeah, it's where all the people who don't fit everywhere else go. You would actually like it. Yeah. Tahiti. It's a classic. Yeah. Yeah, no, I like it. All of them have decent stuff. Yeah. Hi, Sagan. We try to do them pretty regularly, about once a month. Sorry, I'm multitasking here, answering their questions too. Yeah. Try it at one of the bars. It's just fun and it's a non-alcoholic way out. Yeah, exactly. You guys look like you got questions. Oh, yeah, I see you, Scott. Sure. Oh, that's too funny. That's right. Oh, that's too funny. You were doing the CEUs, like some of the FOSOMA ones, or? Okay, yeah, that's yeah. All those cool initials. Oh, that's too cool. Oh, that's too funny. That's nice to hear. I never know how I come across with that crowd. Awesome. Oh, cool. Nice. Are you practicing around here? Okay. Nice. Outstanding. Hopefully you're doing well. Nice. Nice. It's really good. I kind of what we've done here over the years, and it's really nice to have all of that stuff in there, and cross pollinate because sometimes you just need to do more qigong. Yeah. Okay. I know. It fixes everything. Right? I just thought it was like, this should be fun. And I told Ron, like, we could find people that two people. So you told me for sure. And you and that,
instead you're like, okay, I'm like, you just tell me how much I can do. You tell me where I need to go. I'm like, because I'm going to do it. And he's like, oh, I'm like, she's going to do it all. So I am sending you all of these contacts. It took me a while to find. I went to bring up involved because if you still get all of this, right? But the first thing and then I just so they were